All right. Welcome, everybody. This is awkward using a mic, but since it's televised, I suppose I don't have to. I think it is on. Is it on, Tim? Because I think it's just for video purposes, not necessarily projection. So if I break into song, no, just kidding. So hi, welcome. I'm Jeff Watling, Parks and Recreation Director with the City of Issaquah. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Planning Policy Commission, for your flexibility, sort of letting us invade, if you will, and I think take a slightly different approach to a meeting. We're really excited tonight. I'm going to give a really quick introduction and then hand it over to our partners with Burger Partnership to talk a little bit more about the process tonight. But I hope what you find is our goal tonight is a really engaging, interactive opportunity to put a lot of intellect in this room and a lot of people that have thought through Central Issaquah visions, have thought through our park system, and see if we can put and create a unified vision around the Green Necklace. I've had the pleasure of being here just over a year. August of 2016, I came on board. We've been hard at work with the park board, working on a park strategic plan. In my time here, I've heard this great term, the Green Necklace. It's a great vision for a green necklace in Issaquah. In my time, I've probably heard 10, 12 different definitions of what that is. All are good, but as we are honing in on the park strategic plan, and really on the at a point that we've identified some strategic projects, we've really identified how do we begin to unify our existing public system. We really have a need to better understand what the Green Necklace is, as that's been created as part of the Central Issaquah Visions plan. And I think as Central Issaquah Visions continues to get reshaped, I think there's also an opportunity and a need from that standpoint to put some definition around what the necklace is. So our goals tonight, and I think the reason we're trying to do this, what we're seeking to do is to create this, begin to frame up a more specific vision for the necklace. That product that we're going to work on creating tonight, and then coming back, Burger's going to take your work, your great work tonight, and put their professional minds to it, and come back on the 22nd, do some further refinement, and we hope to produce an outcome, a product that then becomes and informs and becomes part of the Central Issaquah Visions work, and also becomes, the same product becomes a component and an element of the park strategic plan. So in the end, we have a bridge. We have cohesiveness between two really important strategic planning documents. So I'm excited, looking forward to it. I'm going to hand it over to Greg Brower with Burger Partnership. Burger has been our consultant with the Park Strategic Plan. A little bit about Burger without making them too. They've done a lot. They do terrific landscape architect, park planning, park project work throughout really the nation, primarily Puget Sound area. They are experts in corridor work. They've done a lot of corridor work with Redmond, with Bellevue, with other neighboring cities. So I think leaning on their expertise and utilizing their expertise in this effort is going to be very beneficial for us. So, Greg, no pressure.
I'm gonna
Use
just
that.
let this hold, and Stephanie will also help with the presentation here. So, add to the unique perspective that we bring is actually in Issaquah, having worked both for the city in the public sector and things like that, but we've also worked in the city on the private side and part of some of the developments and things like that. So we kind of have the ability to come at things both ways. And so, about this green necklace and how does it become real has been kind of an intriguing conversation for us. So first thing is we're not here tonight to change anything. Ours isn't gonna, we're here to kind of try to pick up where you've been working. We'll walk you through a few slides. I think most everything that you're going to see up here on the screen is in an abbreviated packet there at your table, so you'll have that to reference to as we get to the exercise. But definitely wanted to make sure that you understood that we're just here to follow up with where the efforts have been and kind of advance it from there. So we're going to just go through a few of the exhibits that we brought and talk a little bit about the elements that we see. So we see this sort of as tonight's effort will be about mapping. Obviously, we brought some maps and things like that to work from. But parks, trails, open space, the roadway system are kind of the components that we see as key to this effort. And then with that, defining tonight the location, well, tonight's about location with some of the parks and trails and open space. And then, of course, we'll get into character a little bit more later on. We're going to touch on it just a bit tonight because we think that it's important to have this vision. What does the green necklace look like, and what is everybody? So really, the ultimate goal is so everybody has kind of the same explanation. If you happen to be in a meeting or you meet somebody or greet somebody and they ask about the green necklace, everyone starts to say the same thing because we've heard kind of various definitions. So we'd like to kind of see that be a resulting piece of what comes out of this. Hierarchy, that'll be a little bit of what you're going to be looking at some of the elements today. So we just thought we'd start off with just an aerial view because this would probably be the most current we have for what's happening in the city. You have a copy of that at the table just to show this, and the yellow boundary, of course, is the central Issaquah area. So pretty simple example or exhibit of what we have today. And then kind of quick mapping of the trails and the open space. So very simple. This is actually the larger map that you have at your table, just showing some of the elements that we know that exist today, so to kind of help the exercise along a little bit. So what we did is to kind of educate ourselves and thought it was important to go back and look at what's been done previously. This is from the 2010 task force work, and so this shows some mapping of some of the trails, the pathways, the open spaces, the parks, things like that. So a pretty complete map. There's even photos that started to indicate some of the character and the visual qualities of some of these elements that would be considered to be part of the green necklace. So another exhibit then that shows a little bit more of the advanced thinking. A little bit. It's very washed out on my screen. It's clear, a little clearer up there. But the idea of the different types of street designations and things like this. And so this is a little bit of that hierarchy that we'll get into with some of the pedestrian ways and things like that. But just an exhibit that we thought was valuable to remind of where some of the work had been. So now fast forward, 2012. So this is out of the Central Issaquah plan. So this starts to show the existing streets all in the gray there, and then some of the proposed new street grid, kind of starting to give that vision to some of the changes that could be seen in Central Issaquah. So we felt like there's a pretty good mapping exercise that had been done that was good to share and be part of the thinking for this evening. And then again from the Central Issaquah plan, this now started to overlay, and we started to see the different types of paths that we might have. I mean, with the natural, urban, on-street, things like that. So we had a lot of the corridors showing up. And then, of course, identifying the spots where some of the open space elements are. And the open space, again, are some of the new parks, proposed parks, things like that. And then we'll break it down a little bit further in a minute with some of the exercise that we look at doing. So. And then all the way to Central Issaquah plans for 2015. So now we've got a fairly, a recent example of some of those same trail elements, some of the same open space elements brought forward to some of the current thinking about where we're going, starting to talk about some of the proposed parks and some of the opportunities that were being identified kind of throughout the Central Issaquah area. And then a mapping of the street routes. So there's both off-street routes and on-street, being able to map that and show that. And then, of course, with the the proposed parks, shown some of those. I guess this one actually was doing a little bit more with the parks and plazas, and that's another component that we think is important. We think about is not just identifying what we all see is the parks and the green spaces, but what about the urban spaces that might be associated a bit more with the development? Where do those start to occur? And that brings us to another layer that we wanted to bring in, and this is one of the things that we've been working on with the Parks and Recreation is the park strategic plan. So Stephanie's going to run us through that.
So this adds another few layers to the thinking. There are 3 major corridors that make up the backbone of the park system and that will affect the central Issaquah planning. So one is the Mountains to Sound corridor that all of you have heard of. It's pretty well defined for most of its traversing through Issaquah, as you can see by the harder pink line there. But then as it reaches central Issaquah, it kind of blurs out and it needs greater definition. And there's potential for it to traverse through central Issaquah or further south, but this route could potentially become a major planning point of the Green Necklace vision, so that could be something to think about as you're mapping tonight. The second and third major corridors are very interrelated. One is the Rainier Trail, which you all know transitions into the East Lake Sammamish Trail. And then the third corridor is the Creek Corridor, which some of you have heard referred to as the Spine. So these 2 corridors work together to create a really unique green and urban experience that cuts through central Issaquah. This proposed creek walk uses parcels that are mostly already acquired, as you can see in the blue there. And some of these parcels are undeveloped as yet, but they will all work together to create that creek walk system.
I'm sorry, did you say that the dark blue there are areas that have been acquired?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are all parcels that the city has to work with. And there, you can see that there are some portions that are unconnected as of yet. And then other strategic projects proposed by the park plan include parks that are surrounding central Issaquah, and again, you can see those in kind of the faded blue surrounding the edges there. And let's see, sorry, I lost my place. These blurred circles show some strategic park project areas where specific parcels have not been chosen for parks, but these are recognized as places parks are needed. And you'll notice that these coincide with some of the major parks suggested in the 2012 and 2015 plans. Other elements that will greatly affect the Central Issaquah districts that are proposed by the strategic park plan are these key connections to surrounding neighborhoods. These connections could influence the Green Necklace and vice versa. They could inform one another. And so Greg will be talking a little bit about the group exercises we'll be doing.
And hopefully what we've done, since we do have 2 groups here that maybe work a little bit separate, by showing some of the planning work that had been done and now showing some of the park work that's being done, kind of showing the layers and how we want to see that kind of come together. So a little bit of kind of what we presented there. So what we're looking at this evening is on that map in front of you. We've kind of gone through the exhibits that talked about the different elements in there. We talked a lot about trails and a lot about some of the open spaces and public spaces. And so these are just some of the topics that we have there. This doesn't limit it. There could be some other things if you guys have other ideas that come up of spaces and things you think would be appropriate in your city. But we're talking about the major public parks, minor public parks. These images are here just to start to give a teaser of kind of the conversation about character and vision, and that'll be what we'll talk about in 2 weeks. But tonight would be about mapping, but we thought at least kind of give just a little bit of a start on what we're thinking about, what some of this stuff might actually look like. Then we've got the major public plazas, again the more urban areas, and then minor public plazas and parklets, so down to the smaller scale. So these are all scales of things that you've seen in some of the previous mapping. Nothing new, but some ideas and vision of, what does it start to look like, and kind of get your mind thinking about that too. This was again, the trails. So we had trails that are on the right-of-way, and what we meant by that. So top slides of shared lanes or shared travel places, and then off right-of-way, of course, trails. So some examples of varying things there that we'd think about mapping this evening. Again, addition to the street grid, just borrowing some of the examples of some of the study that had been done about how the streets actually can work and how they can be shared between the various uses of people trying to get places, not just about the car, but what's happening more on the edges there between the bikes, the pedestrians, everybody else moving between various elements within the city. So it's this, again, a kind of a summary slide about spaces. So all of the things that we're thinking about with regard to spaces and what we might be planning, the opportunities for where these things might occur within the Central Issaquah area, and of course the connections between the elements there that are shown on the left, but also between other things that aren't shown here, which could include businesses and homes and shopping and whatever, it's kind of your vision and your idea, so where that actually brings everything together and how it does it. So we're curious to learn there too. So getting to the exercise and kind of get the Sharpies going and everything. These were a series of questions that we just developed, kind of thinking, okay, there's a lot of conversation about the green necklace and what it looks like and what does it mean. And the one that we're going to focus on here to start the exercise is right there in the center, is what does success of the green necklace look like? Everybody's going to have kind of their own ideas and things like that, so we wanted to start there. But as we kind of work through this evening, is some of the other questions that were just, why the green necklace? How would you describe the green necklace to someone that doesn't live in the area? This is my favorite because I got asked this in a presentation one time. If you, or the New York Times, wrote an article about the green necklace, what would the headline say? So kind of very succinctly, how would you describe it? How would you give that? I kind of mentioned the next one. What are we connecting? Think about that. Home, school, transit, services, businesses, shops. What are we connecting? Where do you want to pause? So you're making connections, but what's happening for where we pause? Parks, plazas, intersections. Are these natural? Are they built? Those different types of things. What experiences and opportunities are desired? And then Central Issaquah Plan and the Park Strategic Plan are refining and defining the green necklace. What other planning efforts, if you have some other things in mind, because we know there's a lot of activity, and just even working on the Park Strategic Plan, I think we were handed about 8 or 9 other planning efforts in the city that are happening that we wanted to be aware of to see how we might dovetail the Park Strategic Plan. But thought we'd throw that up there as an idea. So I think that what we're doing with the exercise then is just to start in groups, and I think what we'll do we need to move people around at all? Good mix.
Presentation, a good mix. Connie, do you want to join Danielle and Jonathan? Great. That's great. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're fine. I think we're good.
Good. Okay, so everybody's where they need to be, so we don't have any shuffling. So we thought what we do is just start, maybe this is the first 5-10 minutes here, is to just take a minute to think about that question. The Post-it notes and Sharpies, write down your thoughts on what does the success of the green necklace look like. I mean, if it's a word, that describes it, or if you need to write a sentence or something like that, just give us some indication of what you think it is. We'll collect those. We'll have somebody come and join each table. So I'll join a table. Stephanie. Yes?
Can I ask a question before we go into the exercise?
Sure.
Because the question you're asking here is, what does success of the green necklace look like?
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask what success for this meeting would look like? Because we've got parks, and we've got planning, and we've got community members here. So what is the goal, what are you trying to get out of it, and what will be the benefit for each of those groups?
Okay. So I think what the goal that we're after is resulting out of this mapping exercise is an indication from all the collective minds of what are some of the connecting routes. So are they showing on these maps? Are there some that you need to create? What are they? Are they, again, trails? Are they on right-of-way? Are they off right-of-way? Do we want to have interconnecting pathways through alleyways? I don't, it can be whatever you think it is, but this idea of having everybody kind of map out what the priority, or at least their strongest feelings, desires are there, and then also identify where it seems like spaces that people could gather. So if we think about Central Issaquah, and we know there's a lot of potential, and we're kind of waiting to see it happen, and you get to a corner where you could see it developing, something happening on all four corners of that. Maybe part of it's already developed, but would part of it be carved out for some other purpose so that, community members could stop and gather? Maybe it's partly for that business to spill out and engage, but kind of creating that, a more social atmosphere in some of those. Maybe some of it's mid-block.
Okay, so let me stop you there. What I'm hearing from you is this is a lot of mapping, where do we want routes, where do we think plazas could be, things like that. And I think that's great for parks, but I'm not sure that's what PPC needs at this point in the plan. So I'm wondering if there's anything here that's going to help give us what we need while we're talking through the Central Issaquah plan to know where the green network necklace is going to be, so that we can include that in our next phase of the plan.
And let me just quick jump in with that, I'll try to talk loud, is I think we're trying to get a map so we don't have the bubbly P map, that we're trying to get a map that's sort of more agreed upon with PPC and Park Board, so that it's sort of the framework for then Parks is going to launch out in the strategic plan, but we're going to take that mapping exercise into our visions and have that more defined. It won't be perfect, it won't have all the details, but it'll be more than the bubbly one that we have now.
So this is to refine the page or two vision.
Yes, yes. Does that work? Does that help?
What were you going to say about that?
Yeah, well, so this isn't just a parks exercise. I guess how I would respond to that, and what I understand within the Central Issaquah visions, there's this definition of the necklace that is one element of that visions. I think the goal tonight, the focus tonight is the necklace. How do we let's not start from scratch. We're not starting from scratch tonight. Let's take the work that's been done by both groups, by the original task force, and let's see if we can identify the corridors. If we can identify utilizing our existing parks, how do we start linking our existing parks? What are these particular corridors that we really want to not just hypothetically put dots to, but let's define it. Stephanie spoke to the spine. Just use that as an example. Within the parks plan, we really want to set a vision. This spine has a much bigger relationship with all the city, not just Central Issaquah. So it's really this idea of how do we go from Squawk Park, our southern border, all the way to Lake Sammamish. And not just hypothetically hope it, but let's take the properties we have, let's take our existing parks, let's take our existing assets, the Rainier Trail, these properties we have at the Creek Walk, and let's really shape and identify that corridor, and then start to identify strategic projects where we can bite by bite start to make that happen. If in an ideal world, and I don't know that this all happens tonight, I would love to see that. That feels to me like one edge of the necklace. That feels like one piece of the necklace. Now, as the Parks Director, and hopefully this helps planners as well, and the Planning Commission, or PPC, is how might we define the rest of what this necklace is in that type of a way, in a more succinct, defined way that now informs the park plan. It might also inform future planning work. It might inform as developers begin to come when the moratorium's gone. Here's an identified corridor. As development is on that corridor, you're going to be part of the public system, or part of the necklace.
Okay, let's move on into it.
Okay.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
two clarifying questions? You have some assumptions. One is the Mountain Sound Greenway is only one, and I've always pictured it on both sides of the freeway because before it was on the other side of the freeway. So we're free to redraw your assumptions. Right?
Please, absolutely.
And then the other thing is you don't talk about public-private parks or private-public parks or even private parks as part of the parks system. But I think we're actually going to have a lot of that within the Central Issaquah plan. And that one's a little more difficult to connect, but I think it needs to be connected with the public system in some way. Any ideas on how to think about that?
Yes, I would agree. The exercise tonight is not, I think as we set up this opportunity for an east-west corridor, the Mountain Sound Greenway Trail, as you begin working on that as a group, yes, please, if you have ideas or thoughts on where you think that corridor makes the most sense, let's have that discussion tonight. I think to your point, Connie, that yeah, the necklace is going to be a layer of public parks and privately owned, private maintained spaces, parks, places, absolutely. We're not trying to differentiate those tonight. I think as you think about what those spaces are or how you might want those spaces to be or where you think they seem to naturally make sense, certainly put those into the plan. I think as we take this work tonight and put some definition to it, I think the necklace is both, but there's likely what's going to be helpful for us in defining is differentiating what we think is the public system and what we think is the private system, because as we then strategically take steps to make it happen, the steps needed for the city to create the public portion of the system are different. It's different steps, it's different work than the city influencing, encouraging the private elements.
And I did flip back to this slide just to point that out, that the idea was that it's any space. It wasn't supposed to be just publicly held and publicly maintained and programmed. It was just places that the public can go to is kind of what we're doing. So this could be about public or private opportunities. So, yeah.
So I got 3 questions. First one is, as far as the Mountains of Sound pathway going across 900, is that going to be a bridge? Is that going to be going through the intersections? And 2, as far as funding goes, who actually pays for the Mountain of Sound pathway? Is that BC, or is it state, or is it a combination of both?
So questions specific to how is the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trail going to happen and get done, we're not going to be able to answer that tonight. Like we're trying to map and identify where we want it. What is the vision? What is the location that makes sense for us to do it? Implementation of this work is going to be bite by bite. It's going to be a combination of a lot of those things. I think as we identify the corridor, though, as we identify where we want this to be and where we think the opportunities are on right away, then that's going to set different strategies for how that happens. Where we see their opportunity or need for it to be off right away, that's going to allow us to set different strategies for how we make that happen.
So it should be aspiration.
It's going to, yes, it's going to need to be.
And you might have said this already, and this is my other question, and I don't know if this is the appropriate name or not. Are we sticking with the Green Necklace, or are we open to new names?
We're open to a new name. I think network was discussed by PPC, so yeah, hey, network it is.
I think that's a bad name since you want the whole city to be connected. It's great to talk about just the central area, but you go from the central area to all the do, which I'm sure you are, is to connect the whole city.
Yes, unifying the whole thing. Now, how does that whole system relate to Central Issaquah? But I love the idea of the network. So we have our groups. We're going to have facilitators at each table. Do you want to talk through what you want the first task or exercise to be?
Yeah.
Do we need like the tabs for the first exercise or the success?
Yeah, well, I don't think everybody got a chance to jump in on that, so it was good to do some questions. I think we forgot that part on the agenda, was to allow questions, so good to do that. But I think quick, if we can just kind of go through that for 5-10 minutes and write down that, go back to the questions. You know, what does the success look like to you? And then we'll collect those as we get somebody assigned to each table to kind of help out. So, and away we go.
Yep, get a facilitator at each, helper at each table. Should I designate someone to go first? I love it. And I'm going to ask you guys to come up here so the wondrous world of video can I'll be your man.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about a few things. The idea of connections to these kind of major arteries, which are the commuters. And so the idea that you can come down to Mountain Sound Greenway, we feel like it really needs to be connected into Confluence to be able to get to this north-south Rainier Trail. We talked about this being more of a commuter byway, whereas this creek area is more about the walking connection between that. We talked about the idea down here where you're going to have a lot of people that we want to look at things like green roofs or a promenade with plazas as kind of their connections there, but that it's important to get you down to Tibbetts. Wayfinding here for the trails to make it easier for somebody who's coming through, not only to get them to their farther away destination, but also wayfinding within to say, hey, here's your nearest park, here's how you get down to the plaza, and you're 5 miles away from Cuckoo Point. So that idea of connected things. Anything else, guys?
Not here on the north end. Like some letters up here.
Oh, we felt like this area, fine for bikers who are doing commuting, but really needs more of a scenic walking path and something that connects you to Lake Sammamish State Park, along with this entrance to make that more connected in on the north side.
Connectivity.
Yes. Short and sweet.
Nice. Yeah, AJ.
So we define the green necklace as you have a series of jewels, and then you have kind of green threads that then hold things together into the necklace. And so, kind of your existing jewels, you got Lake Sammamish Park, you've got the mountains. It's one of the things that we talked about are what are new jewels that we'd love to see added. One big one that we thought would be great is we put right here in the middle on I-90 as the prospective station for the Sound Transit station that would come, and then the vision was that station itself would become a jewel in the sense that there would be open space, and that would be a way that would allow the two neighborhoods to transcend I-90. So that would very much be an anchor that things would pass through. And we talked about other jewels. A lot of you seen a lot of the plans. There's a passing of I-90 that's kind of around here, west of the interchange. And then using that bridge is very much like a gateway. So the bridge itself is another jewel people can go to, have view corridors from the bridge. And that's something that people want to go to as a destination. And then we also talked about reorienting Lake Sammamish State Park. The park has a lot of great resources in the park, but really taking advantage of particularly this space right here. And what you guys talked about, having a better walking path there, that's great, but then even more than that, using all this open space here, making that more active, and then also ensuring that there's pedestrian access here where there's current car access, and then improving pedestrian access here for all the people who live in East Lake, so they can get directly into the park on foot or on bike, and sometimes circle around. And we kind of talked about how do you, if you have this bridge here, making sure you have good flow coming from kind of a gateway neighborhood into Gilman. And the last thing we talked about is making sure that you have kind of a port green thread that connects from, you've got the creek paths, and you've got confluence parks, you've got Lakes Family State Park. Make sure that's one long continuous trail that people can access, and that is a destination path by itself, in addition to, the nice trails that we have along Rainier. Oh, and then one thing I thought was really cool, what we suggested was having access straight up the side of the mountain. So that you can get from the highland down here, not simply, because right now you have to wrap around, quite lengthy, but here having some sort of, either whether it be stairs or some sort of switchback so that people can go straight up and down and get from the highlands to what's north of 90 directly would be a really great addition. Did I see anything?
Very nice. Thank you. You guys are, I like the placement.
All right, so we talked about a couple of different things. We kind of went off the grid a little bit. We were thinking Talos over here doesn't have any connection, so there is a sort of connection that goes through a power line trail on Squat Mountain. So it's already, there's no development there, so it might be a good way to just follow through that to connect Talos to downtown. And then we're talking about using the Mountains of Sound trail already and connect it coming down this area here. We're not really sure that this is a really great way to do it as far as an experience goes, because it's kind of it just doesn't make sense. But if you truncate it here, it's more of a comfortable experience coming through here. And while we're in this area here, actually have a people plaza that's lengthwise, so now you have a view corridor coming down into this area here, and all this would become open space. And then moving through here, down to this point here, which is down Newport, because we're already going to put in a new road here, so let's go take advantage of the fact that we have a shared pathway where people and pedestrians and bicyclists will feel safe, connected to Sunset, so you have a bike path coming down through Sunset to the trail hub here, and actually make it a major connection for trail, because now you can go up to Highlands, you can go up to Grand Ridge, and you can actually take Tiger Mountain via, there's a service road that's a double track trail. And you can actually take that down to the back side of the high school. So now you're connecting Old Town and Highlands via trail to the high school. And if you actually went further, you could probably connect it to a dirt road that goes up to the top of Tiger. So now you have cyclists wanting to come through Issaquah, making it as a destination via the Mountain Sound corridor, and they have the option of being able to go up to Tiger and then go to Mountain Bike Park, or two, take this trail up here either to Grand Ridge or to Falls City and continue on. So now you literally go from Seattle to almost North Bend via right through here, and as people come through here, they stop at like Stan's Barbecue or a sandwich shop, and they spend money in our downtown, and then they continue on. And then up here, we also talked about some connectivities, because we feel if this gets redeveloped, Home Depot, Fred Meyer area to shared use, then how are people going to get comfortably from here to here unless there's an overpass right here? Because it's not a very comfortable experience going across East Lake Sammamish. Same with here. This is a really dangerous section of road, and so there's no way for this trail to connect to here, because it's just, I think it's just straight right now. And then as this area develops more offices and so on, putting trails in here so that people can actually have a lunchtime destination to the state park, put in a few connector reels or connectors here, bridges, so that people can actually maybe do a loop, a lunchtime loop, and right here. And overpass, so we can connect East Lake Sammamish Trail across West Lake Sammamish, or across here, because it's such a dangerous intersection, and like what AJ was saying, with ST3 going in, we're not exactly sure where it's going to go, but maybe having, putting in some sort of connection. So we just put a cross here to kind of show we need connectivity, but we're not sure exactly where or how to put that in there yet. And here's a suggestion of a view corridor. So the state park has a view of Mount Rainier. And let's see, what else do we have here? Wetlands. So right here, there's a wetlands area. Kind of useless to actually build anything close to it because the buildings are going to have to sink unless you have really big pylons. So make this part of a people plaza too, with maybe the park sitting where Trader Joe's is today. So you can utilize the wetlands area. If you want to develop it as a wetlands with a fountain or just a wetlands with a park adjacent to it so people have something to look at that's enjoyable, instead of being sort of in the middle of an urban people plaza. Anything else? You guys want to add anything?
Nice. All right. Well done. It's a bigger network. All
right. So adding on to a lot of things that have already been said, we spent a good amount of time talking about continuity of the Mountains to Sound Greenway. And the purple route is kind of what we were thinking. So coming in, and if there's a way to come down kind of the backside of Gateway and that take advantage of that crossing that kind of connects to the state park. And then there's kind of a couple ways that bikes could go, right? So kind of meander through what's the existing business park. We thought this kind of solid route that we had there would be taking advantage of the nice stream, and that would be the nice way to go. And then maybe the trail is the fast way to go. And then a big point would be to maximize the use of this potential gateway, which is right now kind of a stopping point to get from that trail into Old Town.
This is the intersection of Gilman
Yeah.
and Rainier Trail and East Lake Sammamish Trail.
Yeah, so that, making that kind of a place and a gateway that's safe for all modes to come through. And then we talked a lot about Newport, didn't really know what to do with it, but there's something that's got to happen through here that we talked about. And with the new school development happening, if there's a way to connect Newport to Confluence, that's pretty obvious, and take advantage of that. I thought that would be great. And then, like everyone else has said, wherever Sound Transit ends up, we even talked about having that be like a Mercer Island type of lid. That's a nice green space on top or around. That's really nice. So, anything else?
Take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's coming, yeah.
Another 20-acre park, Jim.
What's that?
Another 20-acre park there across the lake.
That's a big lid. It's a really big lid. Yeah.
I was looking at this upside down, so it was a change of perspective.
Let's flip it. I love it.
Okay.
Everyone?
Changing.
Yes.
Okay, let's see, some similarities. We had a potential pedestrian plot, like a plaza, on this side of Tibbetts. I guess that's north of Tibbetts, now that I'm upside down, with a connection, connecting, and that is a great view corridor. So some sort of wide connection from the park to the plaza. We talked about a bridge that would then connect, because there's not a light there right now, but if it came from this plaza onto the boardwalk, then you could get to Lake Sammamish State Park. We also talked about having, Newport is so busy, and Gilman is right next to the freeway, so really having the main kind of nice, pleasant pedestrian way to get through town being an extension of Mall Street and going through this current development, which would change with redevelopment, and having, and that there would be a park. Something's missing in this area if you were to redevelop it, so put the park there. Okay, and then closer to Lake Sammamish, we just thought we need connections. There's no easy way to get across the street and into Lake Sammamish State Park. We also have a live park, kind of right in the same place that others have put it, or at least a bridge, so a way to connect. And then what else do we have? Over here, where there's like Fred Meyer and I guess right now the Party Store has a great view of Rainier. And so when this area is redeveloped, that would be a great place to have a park or like something use like the top of a building for green space. We also talked about connecting, well, it's a missing link that we all want to do, but the Lake Sammamish State Park to South Cove and then to the that Lake to Lake Trail, which is just a natural connection somehow. And then also connecting, going over the freeway, connecting with this area that's being rebuilt now. And then what else do we miss?
I remember your group, as you guys were talking about the Center Greenway Trail, you were thinking north side of I-90 as well.
Yeah, taking advantage of the state park and then this area connected through. Yeah. And, oh, this area here, which it goes from like Lake Sammamish State Park to kind of where Pickering Barn is, just having some sort of safe, pleasant connection that's intuitive to cross that area. Yep, and I think that's most of it.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. All five? Greg?
So,
What do you think of all this? Now it's on you guys.
I think the most interesting thing was, that I learned, Sound Transit thing. Right in the middle of the city, bridging I-90, which is I-90 was one of the trouble things that we've always seen is two halves of central Issaquah with I-90 going through it, and then, just this idea, its location and this idea of becoming kind of this bridge to connect the two sides of it. So, and then a lot of great input about kind of these connections around. I didn't see a lot of ideas about places within some of the neighborhood that might get redeveloped. We got a little bit of that. I saw the grid broken down on some of the drawings, but just started to see some of those coming in there into those spaces too. So we'll kind of have to look at all the maps. One of our jobs, take them all back with us and kind of meld it, kind of collectively bring it back to look at, think about the structure of the next meeting, because we're going to want to report back on this. There's a lot of hard work here, so we want to show everybody kind of what we learned from that, and then kind of evolve it into the character of some of these elements that have been mapped out on here. And that'd be, at least right now, maybe changes, and we'll have to update you on the agenda for the next meeting, but we thought, at least for right now, I think that's what we would do, is at least take this and synthesize it, think a little bit about the commonalities, some of the differences, and map those. We might have to map some alternates on some of these things, just to say, and then get your feedback next time so you can solidify that way. But,
A couple things I heard, if I can. Connectivity, and even how you all are defining success of this network. It's really about linking, and that was certainly reinforced in the conversations we heard. I think that's going to help. I think affirm as we think about character and hierarchy. Well, what's this hierarchy? And I know as we were talking earlier about this differentiation of public scale space and these important private plazas. It's another way that at least I start thinking of hierarchy, not in level of importance, but hierarchy of almost role, what they're being asked to do. But yeah, lots of great thought. I think another thing I heard in all of the groups was, all right, it's Central Issaquah, and this is what I think was so helpful, hearing the lens of the PPC members and the lens of the park board members is, as we think of Central Issaquah and this important work, we can't think of it in isolation. It's part of this grander, it's part of the bigger city, but as we're thinking of a network that's going to support the Central Issaquah area, how is it also connected to and supporting the bigger city? And so I appreciate it. I think everybody's lines went within and also outside. And I think that's a very important takeaway. That's, I think, affirming, if I could speak for the park board members, as we've been thinking of that bigger lens, and now we want to take that bigger lens and really focus it into how is this truly supporting Central Issaquah and the redevelopment goals, the development goals of Central Issaquah. So it's definitely this inside-outside connection.
I just want to share that I think that there are already, like in my opinion, we have a lot of connections already. We have to know them and live here to find them.
Right.
And so that was one of the things that our group talked about that really it resonated with me, is that we want anybody, like you could be a tourist or a visitor or a resident, to be able to walk outside and know where to go. So it would be something that's easy and intuitive, and you don't have to know all the little ins and outs, and then you turn here and you go,
Yeah.
Wayfinding.
Wayfinding, continuity, yeah, I think some of those, we're close. We're
close in a lot of
really
places.
close.
And,
Yeah.
Yep. I also heard a lot about the difference between the higher speed commuter bike ways and also having spaces that were for walking, scenic, something like that. And so looking at that on your north-south and also your east-west and intercity.
Yeah, trail experience, right, and there's trails, it's a misnomer. There's conflict of speed and conflict of experience on trails too that we have to be aware of. Yep, that's a great point. Yeah, Mary?
Well, and one of the things that we talked as a task force, and I brought up again here, was, with light rail coming, was when we get visitors here, is we don't want all the visitors just driving here. And so by having this connectivity, they can come here by bus, or by light rail, or by bike, and then, go out from there. So we don't have to have big parking lots that we have.
But it's linking, it's this continuity, it's this wayfinding, it's this connecting these that, great opportunity. Well, thank you.
So, sorry, I'm late to this endeavor, I apologize, so if this has already been covered, apologize for everything. This is overall concept that these great jewels are in Issaquah, who's responsible for maintaining them, maybe outside of specific parks, areas, public spaces, green natural trees, riverbeds? Who does that fall on?
It's a very broad question.
Yes.
I think it depends on what it is.
I guess I'm not looking for an answer per se, but I would like to see that concept wrapped into this idea of green network, of maintaining the natural beauty that we have, not just green spaces, but also the gems and how those get maintained outside of the park area.
No, that's a great point. And again, I guess I would speak to hierarchy. I think that becomes that hierarchy piece, is what is public scale? What is of a public scale that there's a public stewardship, public maintenance piece, but then there's other jewels, exactly right, that might be private or have a different purpose that could be publicly accessible, but they're going to be privately maintained and privately owned. So, thank you. Any other closing thoughts, takeaways?
This was awesome. I really liked the map, being able to come out and collaborate on it and draw on it. I think this was it was a successful way of ending the meeting, because we've got our thoughts on paper, and as we were putting them on paper, then we started new conversations on, oh, what about this, what about that? So I think this is a really great way to start the conversation, first generation. I just wish it was extended out, because I think it just looked too small.
Well, right, Central Issaquah being the focus, but you're right, Greater Issaquah. AJ?
And I want to throw one comment that I forgot to mention, I saw, I think a few people have alluded to, but is as the street grid gets broken up, particularly as like the Mall Street extension and whatnot in the Gilman area, is to also look at those as opportunities, not simply to put in new roads, but to use that right of way to a very broad pedestrian boulevard, as opposed to simply just get another street.
Cool. So, from here, Greg and Stephanie and team are going to take this info and begin to deduce it, compile it, bake it a little bit, put their professional lens on it. The intention is to come back on the 22nd with some, with product, with...
We'll see,
with,
yeah,
yes.
it's one of those things, like I said, at the end of the evening, we'll kind of see where we are. If everyone had drawn the same map, it would have been really easy for us. But we didn't all draw the same map, so we'll kind of have to take a look at them over. And I said, I think we're going to come back with some options, and maybe even show those and say, here's some things, and it's not bad. Maybe there are some things that are considered depending on the direction that other things go, sound transit or whatever influences we have, and just have that shown back. And then I think, I think there'll be ample time to kind of do that, revisit back with you and get your thoughts on that, but then also dive a little deeper into this character pieces. And that's probably going to be more a visual exercise, kind of what we already started with the slides you see up there. And we'll just expand those out kind of into some of the character and the materiality and experience and things like that, and make sure that as we define these elements on a plan, we have a way to share the vision with other people that weren't part of this meeting, weren't part of the plan, weren't part of the park board, that they can actually then see, oh, okay, this
Can I
is what...
suggest something?
Yes.
Update this,
Mm-hmm.
because this has
A lot of-
your
right.
visuals for connections and also the character ideas all in one. It communicates it very well.
And there is also a task force matrix that was done that started to get into the various character elements and it started to assign images. And we could see a few more images added to it, but it was a great basis for kind of where,
It was a good baseline. It's a great point. It is a great baseline. Thank you. Planning Policy Commission, thank you for letting us invade. I hope you felt it was constructive and useful. I hope this is driving toward, I know we're all on timelines in terms of these the Central Issaquah visions and us adopting a park strategic plan. So our goal is for this to be very efficient and again, unified. Let's take these planning documents and have them married together. So thank you very, very much.